It all started when one day a gate leading to another world appeared on Earth, with a 3-star rating and a timer. When the timer expired, the gate suddenly opened, and out came several deadly monsters, likely from a different realm. These monsters laid waste on Earth, destroying everything in their path and taking thousands of human lives. The humans fought back with guns and bombs, but these monsters were immune to such weaponry. There was only one countermeasure to these monsters, which was called the Gate of Trails. Through these gates, several humans appeared alongside the monsters, who had exceptional abilities and powers. One after another, these guys defeated all the underworld monsters, and even though people were relieved, they were also scared of these new humans. One day, a giant clock appears in the sky, which says day 53 and shows a timer of 24 hours before the next gate opens. Everyone looks up to it in terror, sensing that when the timer runs out, this gate will bring the end of the world. However, these humans with abilities, who are now calling themselves Sky Clock, promise to put an end to this calamity. The fate of the world is entrusted to these heroes, but when the time actually comes, they fail their quest. Now the giant dragon that appeared from the gate has no resistance and can destroy the entire world however he pleases. Just then, a mysterious figure by the name of Subaru appears, and people look up to him like he's their god or something. The only thing that sets Subaru apart from the other players is that he, unlike them, has received powers from the Rainbow Door, meaning his abilities are much stronger than any of them. Subaru then summons his sword and slices through the dragon's body at high speeds. Before you know it, the dragon is obliterated, and the only thing that stands is Subaru, the savior of mankind. The crowd is initially shocked, but soon starts cheering for him. Seeing how everyone loves him, and even the kids look up to him, Subaru gives out the cutest smile known to mankind. Carrying that smile, Subaru zips up the building like he's some budget Spider-Man and lands on the roof where other players await him. They collectively praise and congratulate him for the success of his mission, but Subaru remembers how he was treated like a vegetarian at a barbecue party. His current focus is the survival of the human race, yet he can't help but recall how he got here. One day, while Subaru was all bruised up thanks to some local bullies, he came across a rainbow 5-star door that could change his life. As he grabbed the doorknob, the bullies found him and hoped to stop him before he could enter. A door had appeared before him earlier too, but that time he hesitated and lost the opportunity to turn his life around. This time, he immediately opened it and crawled his way inside, hoping to regain everything he had lost. Before this, he was in his home watching a podcast of Japan's first gold player Hirosaka. At that time, Subaru was 15 years old and looked up to Hirosaka as his hero. His brother Taiga, on the other hand, was indifferent and told him to keep his mouth shut. Subaru asked why Taiga was so rude despite them being brothers. Taiga didn't even hesitate, simply stating that it was because Subaru's loser act was adopted. Meanwhile, the news reporter asks Hirosaka about the recent incident involving a gate, explaining how the time ran out and 16 people died because of it. Hirosaka mentioned how the monsters are sealed behind these gates, displaying a timer. Once the timer reaches 0, the gate opens and unleashes these otherworldly beings onto the Earth. There is only one way to prevent it. The players selected from the Door of Trials must invade the door and defeat the creatures before the timer runs out. The recent incident should not have happened if everyone had been careful. But once the monster was released, it was Hirosaka who took the challenge and defeated it with a single blow. Despite his best efforts, he could not undo the damage that was already done and blamed himself for the loss of those 16 innocent lives. The news reporter sucks up to Hirosaka and explains how things would have been much worse if he hadn't arrived. Ignoring her yapping, Hirosaka asks the people to report sightings of these gates as soon as possible to prevent such incidents from repeating themselves. He sternly promises everyone that the players will protect them, even if it costs them their own lives. Seeing him lights up Subaru's face, who looks up to him as his hero. 5 years ago, when the first gate appeared, people fell into despair knowing that military weapons do no damage against these creatures. The only people who were able to fight this threat were the chosen ones, who had passed the Door of Trails that appeared at the same time as the gates. These gates are of 3 ranks: bronze, silver, and gold, with gold being the strongest rank, which grants exceptional fighting powers. These players are also granted large sums of money and fame according to their ranks. The news reporter asks Hirosaka what kind of people are chosen for the Door of Trials, and he reveals he was taught by the brilliance of the soul that only those who are strong can face these trials. Taiga mocks Subaru, claiming a pathetic loser like him will never be chosen, but he is shocked to see a door appear right next to Subaru in their apartment. Subaru is shocked and realizes he can be as popular as Hirosaka if he enters the door. However, Taiga pushes him aside and takes the door for himself. 3 years pass and Subaru is now 18 years of age. The man finds himself restrained by a web with some bullies throwing rocks at him. One of them decides every hit on Subaru's head will grant them 10 points. As he prepares to strike him in the head, a gangster-looking guy with a side chick appears and stops the bullies in their tracks. This guy is Taiga, who, on that day, survived the golden door he stole from Subaru and became the youngest gold player in Japan. Now he looks down on Subaru and even mocks him for getting bullied by 3 bronze-ranked players. Taiga feels disgusted to be Subaru's brother, but he's relieved by the fact that they are not related by blood. He then asks the bullies to hand over the stone and uses his skill that light up the whole factory. His skill is called Golden Arm, a power so strong it could rival Hirosaka's golden sword. Taiga then uses all his strength to throw a stone above Subaru's head, which not only destroys the wall, but goes so high up in the sky that it makes the clouds disappear. His power is so overwhelming that even the bronze players are shaking in their boots, and Subaru is so terrified, he awakens his own powers of wetting his pants. As he sobs like a miserable waste of space, Taiga looks at him with disgust and tells the bullies to do whatever they want with Subaru, while he does whatever he wants with his side chick. The bullies strip Subaru naked and upload his pictures on social media, making him a laughingstock for everyone who had the misfortune of knowing him. That night, the news reports of all the gates in Koto, Sujinami, and Shinagawa being destroyed by the players. As a result, the traffic control has been lifted, and Taiga, who played a major role in this quest, is celebrated by his parents. His mother reveals how he's supporting them despite being a student and can't express how proud she is of him. She mocks her husband for having Subaru with another woman, who acts as if someone pissed in his gene pool. As they're busy roasting the hell out of Subaru, the man is in his hidey hole studying. Taiga notices that they are out of sparkling water and calls him out to buy some. Subaru says he's studying, but Taiga tells him there's no point in it since he'll always be a failure. He further tells him he will be staying in that hole for the rest of his life and won't be allowed to leave no matter what. Subaru is then forced to get sparkling water from the nearby store and wonders how long he will be able to live like this. In summer, he will be exhausted due to the extreme heat and will shiver with cold in winter. On top of that, he will have to do all the house chores like mopping the floor, cutting grass, and washing clothes all by himself. The thought of living that miserable life terrifies Subaru, and the man starts panicking because he has no way out of this hellhole. Just then, the 3 bullies from before appear right behind him, claiming they just raided a door and are super stressed. They will use Subaru for their entertainment, so that they could relieve some of that stress. Subaru immediately runs off, and even though the bullies need some medical attention, they decide to toy with Subaru and finish him off before anything else. Subaru has made some distance from the bullies, but they catch up to him in an instant thanks to their abilities, and slice him up using their swords. Subaru realizes that these guys actually want to eliminate him and panics. Just moments ago, he was moping about his pathetic existence, but now that death is knocking, he's thinking his life isn't too shabby for a near-death experience. He tries his best to run away, but the bullies catch on quickly, cornering him into an inescapable alley. Once there, Subaru gets stomped on like a cockroach and begs for them to stop or he will die. However, the bullies have decided to finish him off here and prepare their skills. Just then, a door appears and slices one of them in half, stopping them in their tracks. The door first appears as bronze, but soon goes to silver and then to gold. However, after some further tinkering, the door actually turns into a rainbow color, the first of its kind. Realizing it could be the strongest one yet, the bullies decide to enter and take the powers for themselves. However, the doorknob is on the other side where Subaru is, and before they can get to him, he opens the door and takes the opportunity to turn his life around. The bullies aim to stop him before he can enter, while Subaru recalls how he was given the same opportunity 3 years ago as well. The bullies get desperate and attack him so viciously that his legs are blown off from his body. Despite being in unimaginable pain, Subaru recalls all the horrible things he has endured and pushes himself. Entering the door, he reminisces about Taida stealing his golden door and using it to get fame, money, and business. All of those things were supposed to be his, but now he will take it all back. Just then, a voice welcomes Subaru into the trail and a faceless demon appears to take his test. Unfortunately, Subaru is missing a whole chunk of his body and can't even stand, let alone take a stand for himself. The faceless demon approaches Subaru and gently places his hand on his head. He then injects his index finger into Subaru's skull, which causes his body to be covered with electric sparks. A user interface shows up, explaining that the system is being updated and Subaru's body is being restored. A few seconds later, Subaru's legs begin restoring and a CPR is performed, which springs him back to consciousness. Just then, Subaru notices the demon right next to him and jumps back in fear. However, the demon starts walking in the opposite direction, leaving Subaru confused. He starts looking around to check where he is and remembers entering the rainbow door before losing consciousness. This means this white void that he is in is actually the rainbow door, but that still does not explain what the demon's purpose is. Meanwhile, the news reporter asks Hirasaka to tell their viewers what it is like beyond these doors. Hirasaka reveals he personally saw a medieval castle covered in gold, where the master of the door lived. Inside every door, there is a being, the door master who rules over that realm. The players must get approval from these door masters in order to obtain their powers. Unlike what Hirasaka said, Subaru is inside this white void, but at least now he knows this faceless demon is the door master. Subaru starts panicking, wondering what kind of trail he will face, and recalls that Hirasaka faced a knight shrouded in gold armor. Hirasaka was able to acquire the knight's approval after he dueled with him and landed a single hit. As a reward, the knight granted him some of his powers and he became a gold star player. Subaru understands now that he might fight this demon and land a hit on him at least once, but the demon has such a menacing aura, it'll actually be acceptable if he wets his pants this time. Just then, the demon calls Subaru, who gets terrified knowing it can talk as well. The demon asks him if he's gonna sit on his ass all day, making him wonder if Subaru had some brain damage too, which he forgot to fix. Subaru is sweating like a pig and nervously tells him that his brain is functioning fine despite him looking like he's been in a terrible accident. The demon then asks Subaru to stop wasting time and attack him, explaining that he will share some of his powers with him if Subaru manages to land a hit. Subaru for some reason is more interested in chit-chat and asks the doormaster who he really is. He explains how he only knows about the regular bronze, silver, and gold type doors, but has never seen or heard of one that's rainbow-colored. However, the doormaster gets frustrated as none of these things matter and demonstrates his destructive powers, which further demotivates Subaru because he can never land a hit on something so powerful. The doormaster is so impatient he starts tapping his fingers and yells at Subaru to attack him because he is wasting his precious nap time for this. Subaru tries to gather some of his strength to get up on his feet, but his legs are shaking so hard he can't even stand. Seeing him in this state, even the doormaster wonders how a pathetic loser like him was selected for the trial, but it can't be helped now. The doormaster then waves his hand, which causes several weapons to appear on top of Subaru. These weapons then start dropping around him like missiles, making him think this might be the end of him. However, all of them land around him, and the doormaster tells him to use one of these weapons if he's too big of a wuss to use his fists. If even that does not settle things for Subaru, he is told to go back the way he came so the doormaster can find someone else. Faced with the option of hitting the doormaster or going back to the world where he was almost bullied to death, Sabura is such a freaking loser that he actually decides to go back to the door. The man is so pathetic even the doormaster mocks him for it, reminding him that he opened this door to gain powers, not to chicken out. Despite that, Subaru tells him he won't understand because he has all this power. The doormaster calls him a scum, which perfectly encapsulates his entire existence, but that reminds him of his bullies in Taliga, who used to call him the same thing. The doormaster has had enough of this whining and asks him to leave, stating that he solely will be responsible for the choice he makes here. Subaru looks him through the door's reflection and sees a poor helpless old man, which will most certainly be his future if he keeps living the way he does now. This gets him pumped up, just enough to slam the door. He then wonders why everyone treats him like garbage, blissfully unaware that it's because of his hideous face. He does not understand why everyone looks down on him, and as he starts banging his head on the doormaster finds him just a little less annoying. Subaru then turns around in anger, reminding the doormaster that he cannot do anything he wishes just because he is more powerful than him. However, the doormaster laughs at him and reminds him that power is the only thing that matters in this world. Subaru asks him to shut up and starts yapping about how much it hurts when he gets beat up or when he's made a laughing stock for the public. He vents out his frustration, claiming no one understands how he feels, but the doormaster is enjoying every second of it, because he just wants this miserable fool to give him a challenge. Just then, Subaru tells him to shut his mouth and leaps at him with his bare fists, demanding the power that he thinks he deserves. Surprisingly, the doormaster does not even dodge his punch, almost as if he wants this guy to have his powers. The doormaster is overjoyed to see him succeed and mentions how he felt the hatred in Subaru's fist when he was struck. The doormaster then passes Subaru and bites his shoulder, which may appear kinky to some, but is actually quite painful. Subaru is as stupid as ever and assumes the doormaster is trying to take his life. In response, he shows him that he also has a biting fetish, which impresses the doormaster so much that he decides to give him a bonus. Soon after, Subaru collapses on the floor with his budget Squid Games costume, and the system notifies him that the trail has been completed successfully. Following that, his body gets reconfigured, and the doormaster tells him that they will meet again. Subaru asks him who he is earlier, so the doormaster tells him his name is Vanquish before vanishing into thin air. With that, the trial is complete and Subaru becomes a player. The user interface then tells him that he's inherited the abilities of Vanquish, who is actually a vampire elder. A notification shows him his current skill called Blood Mold, followed by the bonus skills Vanquished bestowed on him. These skills are Blood Taker, one who loads the light, and one who walks beneath. The next notification tells him that the realm of trails will disappear in 30 seconds, and he must leave through the door before the timer runs out or he'll be erased. Soon after, the floor starts crumbling, but Subaru is so tired from his trail that he cannot even move his body. Eventually, he falls into the void, and the rainbow door shatters, which even the bullies notice from the other side. They are furious and assume Subaru failed the trial, thus ruining their one and only shot at taking it for themselves. Just as they turn around in disappointment, a rainbow light appears behind them, and out pops Subaru, who has now become a rainbow-level player. They ask him if he succeeded in the trail, but before Subaru can answer, one of them swings his weapon at him. Unlike before, Subaru successfully dodges his attack, but still doesn't fight back. The bully accuses him of stealing their door, but Subaru claims it was his to begin with. The bully lunges at him once again, aiming to slice through his neck, but Subaru's eye starts glowing in rainbow color, and he is able to see the attack coming in slow motion. This allows him to duck it at the last second, making him realize he can see every single attack coming even before it happens. As Subaru dodges dozens of the bullies' attacks like Peter Parker, who just awakened his Spidey powers, they quickly realize that he is not the same man as before. Eventually, Subaru gets sick of it and grabs the bully's hand, asking him to stop this madness. However, the bully spots Subaru's legs trembling, proving that no matter how much power he has, he's still a trembling loser on the inside. He cleverly uses this opportunity to intimidate Subaru, which has him begging for forgiveness just like before. The bully strikes Subaru's belly with his knee and then proceeds to punch him right in the jaw. Subaru instinctively screams in pain, but then realizes that the bully's attacks do not hurt him at all. Just then, a user interface pops up and shows him his health and magic points. It tells him that he won't be able to fight if his health reaches 0, so he must finish this before that happens. He finally realizes how his perception of the world has changed to that of a normal player. This explains why the punch did not hurt him earlier, and the bully is frustrated as to why Subaru is still standing. His friend, who addresses him by the name Solitary, cautions him from fighting Subaru because he can see the health screen, but Solitary shuts him off, claiming he won't lose to Piss Pants Loser. He channels his skill Red Rose and hurls a fireball at Subaru, who is so stupid he doesn't even bother dodging. Amid the smoke and dust, Solitary assumes he has obliterated Subaru, but much to his surprise, Subaru is standing, albeit he has some bruises on his body. A big chunk of his health is reduced, making him realize he can't just keep tanking hits like an idiot. Solitary, on the other hand, cannot believe how Subaru survived, as Red Rose is strong enough to blow away a car. His friend asks him to call it a night because he is sure the rainbow door is even higher than the gold one. He knows they don't stand a chance against Subaru, and things will go from not great to somebody call 911 if he levels up. However, Solitary's ego is bigger than his level of stupidity, and he wants to take out Subaru right here and now. Subaru, on the other hand, sees them discussing something and wonders if he should make a run for it. Just then, he is restrained in a web, which reminds him of the time he pissed his pants. Seeing how Subaru is unable to escape, Sawatari lunges him to stab him with his sword. In that time, Subaru realizes he has some skills too, but doesn't know how to activate them. As Sawatari gets closer, Subaru closes his eyes to accept his fate. But when he opens them, he sees some of Vanquish's weapons protecting his body. Just then, one of the swords stabs Sawatari, and Vanquish appears to show Subaru how to use his skills. He explains that blood mold allows him to control blood for 10 seconds, and the blades in front of him are actually molded from blood. With that, Vanquish disappears, advising Subaru to channel his hatred and fight Sawatari. Subaru does not understand why this fool is still attacking him, and Sawatari explains that not only did he steal the door, but also caused their friend's death, so he must pay with his own life. Subaru calls bullshit, claiming they were the ones trying to take his life, to which Sawatari says that it is his fault for defending himself. He says no one would care if Subaru died, as he does not have a single person who cares about him. He calls him a worthless piece of shit, which ticks off Subaru, who finally channels his inner hatred. His body is engulfed in a rainbow-colored aura, but Sawatari is indifferent and tries to attack him again. This time, Subaru finally fights back and uses his fist to destroy Sawatari's sword. He then punches the fool with all his might, causing Sawatari to fling like 100 feet in the air. The man then takes a hard crash, which is enough to break every bone in his body 10 times over, leaving the last bully standing to witness it. Seeing the state of his friend, the man starts trembling in fear while Subaru menacingly walks towards him. However, before Subaru can do anything, the guy uses his budget Spider-Man powers to carry Sawatari and run away. On his way, the man questions how Subaru is so strong despite being at level 1, making him certain that the rainbow rank is way above the golden one. Meanwhile, Subaru still doesn't understand how strong he truly is and celebrates this victory, as if he's defeated the world champion. However, his victory is short-lived when he realizes that there is a literal dead body beside him, urging him to skedaddle out of there. The very next day, some police officers find the body and start taking pictures of the crime scene. They wonder if it is the work of some underworld monster, but their work is interrupted by Hirosaka, who appears out of nowhere. The man claims he scouted the entire block, but was unable to find any traces of an infernal creature, meaning this could have been done by another player. The police officers suck up to him for his help and show him the boy's ID, which shows his name as Kunisaki. Noticing his body sliced in half, Hirosaka assumes he must have been defeated by a silver player or higher. He gets a disturbing feeling, but soon realizes that it is not his own emotion, but rather the emotion of the knight named Ludwig, who was his doormaster. Hirosaka realizes that they must catch the murderer as soon as possible, because this is not the time for the players to fight among themselves. Their mission, after all, is to destroy the main gates as soon as possible before that giant clock in the sky reaches 0. That morning, Taiga enters Subaru's shack to check up on him, but he is annoyed to find out that he still hasn't returned with the sparkling water that he sent him out to get. He figures something must be wrong, because Subaru hasn't even replied to his message, and that's when he hears the news of Subaru Kunisaki's death. Upon seeing Kunisaki's picture, he realizes this guy is among the 3 idiots who keep bullying Subaru. Recalling the incident from 3 years ago, Taiga assumes another door must have appeared before Subaru, and he must have entered it this time. The man is so furious, he destroys Subaru's shack with a single punch, because he cannot stand the idea of his pathetic brother becoming a player. Meanwhile, Subaru arrives at the Japan Players Association headquarters, a place that handles gates and all the people who have awakened their powers in Japan. The man is shocked to see so many players in one spot and approaches the desk where an attendant welcomes him. She congratulates Subaru for awakening his powers and asks if he's come to register himself. In Japan, a player is not allowed to raid gates if he is not a member of the Players Association, and since one can only gain levels in those gated zones, a player must register in order to become stronger. It explains how Kunisaki's death was reported as a homicide, and leading an investigation into it is also the responsibility of other players. In such cases, several strong players show up to make themselves useful, and if one of those strong players happens to be Taiga, Subaru is as good as dead. This is why he must raid gates as soon as possible and become strong so he can defend himself. The counter lady tries to explain the basics to Subaru, but he claims he has already learned about everything in an internet cafe. Rating gates will help level up. More stars on a gate means higher difficulty, and stars that drop after destroying a gate can be cashed out. Remembering how he got a star from Sawatari's body, he shows it to the lady and asks if he can cash this one out for money. This star fell out of his pocket during their fight, and even though Subaru feels bad for using it, he is totally broke and has no other option. The counter lady starts inspecting the star thoroughly and asks Subaru how he found one. Subaru is terrified and claims he just became a player yesterday. A gate appeared in front of him, so he raided it and got this star. However, the lady reveals that it is against the rules, and the penalty for such action is 5 years in prison or 1 million yen. Subaru panics as he does not have a penny to his name, terrified that his hero journey will start with him being locked up for 5 years. Meanwhile, Taiga arrives at the police station, and the officer immediately sucks up to him as Taiga is one of the 7 gold players in Japan. He asks if he can do anything for him, and Taiga asks him for the files related to the homicide that occurred last night. Given his VIP status, the police officer has no choice but to comply. Back in the Heroes Association, the counter lady explains how a non-registered player raiding gates is a serious offense, but since it is Subaru's first time, she lets him go. Not only that, Subaru is able to cash the star out for a whopping 1 million yen. He then learns that 1-star gates give him 1 million, 2-star gates give him 3 million, 3-star gates give 10 million, 4-star gates give him 30 million, and 5-star gates award him 100 million yen. Seeing the chart, Subaru has started to feel hopeful in his miserable freak show of life. But regardless, he still has to risk his life every time he enters the gate. He decides to look for a gate to make more money, but then he realizes he needs to stop looking like he's been in a terrible accident. He visits a barber to get rid of that yeety-ass haircut, and then visits a clothing store to get out of his Squid Games costume. Getting out of there, Subaru finally goes from looking hideous to slightly less hideous. He then heads to a cafe to order himself a beverage and enjoys the moment. All his life, he had absolutely no money and never experienced the joy of buying stuff for oneself. But now that he has 1 million yen at his disposal, he can enjoy these basic things in life. Upon sipping on his caramel macchiato, the man practically goes through multiple mindgasms as all he ever drank was mud water. The man feels so happy that he starts crying, and then recalls how he has been humiliated for the past 3 years by his brother and the bullies. He realizes that what he experiences in this moment is true freedom. He decides to finish his drink and look for a gate, so he can make more money and never look back on the life he left behind. Just then, Subaru is pulled out of his daydream when Taiga spots him from outside the glass pane. Seeing him standing there like a menace, Subaru almost wets his pants again and wonders how his brother found him. More importantly, he needs to run as soon as possible or things might turn out not so good for him. Taiga is such a monster that he breaks through the glass pane without any effort and gets a hold of Subaru. He then grabs him by his shirt and flings him across the road, causing Subaru to bounce off several cars in the street. As he's about to crash into a mother and her toddler, he quickly uses his blood mold skills to create ropes and stop his momentum. He barely manages to stop himself before crashing, leaving the mother and the toddler terrified. He yells at them to skedaddle out of there, knowing all too well Taiga will not care about the surroundings. As he prepares to fight, blood starts dripping from his body like ketchup. As his brother menacingly walks towards him, Subaru realizes this is the worst-case scenario for him. While Taiga comments how he never expected him to become a player, Subaru can't help but cuss his luck because he got on the radar of a gold player as a level 1, who just so happens to be his own younger brother. Taiga aims to finish Subaru off here and now, but unlike before, Subaru has some fighting spirit and will defend himself with all of that rainbow power. Meanwhile, the entire road is jammed with traffic, with people running in the opposite direction. A woman asks a stranger why the road is blocked, and he tells her it's because Taiga has gone berserk. Realizing that Taiga is one of the 7 gold players in all of Japan, the man tells her to ditch the car and skedaddle before she gets crushed inside it. Meanwhile, Taiga and Subaru are standing face to face, ready to settle their score with fists and loads of destruction. Subaru asks Taiga how he managed to locate him, but Taiga instead introduces him to his right fist. Subaru surprisingly withstands the blow and realizes that Taiga must have used his phone's GPS to locate him, realizing that it was a mistake on his part as he turned it on just to check his bank balance. However, Taiga summons his golden arm and says it does not matter as he intends to take Subaru's life here and now. Seeing how he's going all out from the start, Subaru closes his eyes and converses with Vanquish. He asks him if they stand a chance, and Subaru tells him that overusing blood mold will drain him in no time. Despite that, Subaru is determined to survive no matter what the cost. As he activates his powers, a user interface shows up that displays his powers and stats. Subaru is a level 1 vampire with his highest stat being 36 points, both in strength and dexterity. On the other hand, his brother Taiga is a level 23 Golden Knight, with his strength being 153 points. He then charges up his attack Golden Impact to obliterate Subaru, but much to his surprise, the man uses blood mold to create a rope and jumps behind Taiga. While Subaru is in the air, he recalls seeing one of his bullies use his web skills in a similar way, which gave him the idea to become a budget Spider-Man. While he's thinking, Taiga quickly turns around and punches him again. Subaru barely dodges the attack, which is so strong it obliterates the entire concrete road they are fighting on. Seeing the sheer strength of his brother's powers, Subaru realizes that one hit is all it is going to take to turn him into spaghetti. Taiga, on the other hand, assumes all Subaru can do is produce ropes with his hands that can help him pull stuff, deeming it a completely useless skill compared to his golden arm. Taiga then rushes in to finish him off, but Subaru stands there without flinching. As Taiga gets closer, the whole area is covered in red mist, blocking his view and hiding Subaru behind it. Just then, Subaru appears behind him, channeling his inner hatred like Vanquish taught him. He goes through all the horrible things Taiga has put him through and channels his strength to land a hit on him. However, Taiga's defense is so strong it breaks Subaru's fingers, leaving him screaming in pain. This was the same attack that took down Solitary in a single hit, but it is now completely useless against Taiga. This just shows the difference in power levels between a bronze and a gold player. Taiga then strikes back and manages to catch Subaru just barely. However, that bear strike is able to slice through Subaru's abdomen, which causes him to lose a significant amount of HP. Due to the bleeding caused by this attack, Subaru's HP eventually drops to just 12 points, and Taiga tells the man to say his final prayer. As he puts his hand on Subaru's head, Subaru quickly gets away, which shocks Taiga. Taiga does not understand what Subaru is trying to do, assuming he's creating that mist again. However, Subaru uses his own blood to blind him momentarily and then molds the blood into the strongest weapons he can create. Subaru confidently shows off his power, hoping he can defeat Taiga with this trick. Little does he know, none of those weapons have any effect on Taiga, a living breathing tank in human flesh. Upon making contact with Taiga's body, Subaru's weapons crack like glass, and so does his confidence. Subaru then realizes that his brother is leagues ahead of him in both defense, attack, speed, and risk. Even after going through everything he did and risking his life to become a player, Subaru seems to be no match for Taiga. As the man menacingly walks towards him, he realizes that Subaru's skill is actually quite powerful, and he will become a nuisance if he levels up. Thus, he decides for the 10th time in a single flight that it's best to get rid of him here and now. As he swings his fist, the impact is so strong it causes debris to fly off behind Subaru, who for some reason is still standing. His HP goes from 12 points to 5 points, much to Taiga's shock. Since speed, power, agility, and even the hardest blades failed, Subaru has the genius idea to create a squishy pillow that surprisingly absorbs all the impact. Taiga compares the squishy pillow to a boxing pad and a tire, but then figures out that it is more similar to a car's airbag. The squishy bag actually sticks to Taiga's hands, who then reveals he imagined a sticky bubble gum that never pops. Remembering that his blood mold only lasts for 10 seconds, he summons more of those gumballs to stop Taiga's movements, even if it costs him all of his magical power. After some time, Taiga is fully covered in the gum and yells at Subaru to free him. As Subaru walks up to a restrained Taiga, he tells him that he will not win with this cheap trick. However, Subaru says he never wanted to win. All he wants is to survive, and with his new power, it seems like he just might make it. He then covers Taiga's face with another bubblegum and counts to 10 while getting out of there. After his ability expires, the bubblegum turns to regular blood, and Taiga decides to give chase. However, Subaru thought ahead and covered the whole area with red mist, leaving Taiga clueless about his location. Taiga is furious and starts yelling out like he's about to become a Super Saiyan, determined to find Subaru and put an end to his hero journey. However, the man is stopped dead in his tracks when he hears a familiar voice calling his name. As he looks around, he sees 3 players among the rubble. These players are Hirasaka, Yudo, and Shikishima, making Taiga realize that he might have gone too far this time. As he turns around to explain his side of the story, a gold chain appears out of the mist that restrains him. Taiga finally grasps the situation. He's caused so much destruction that all other 6 gold players had to be called to stop him. The chains that restrained him came from Hirasaka, who places him under arrest and tells him to yap his side of the story behind bars. That evening, Subaru rests on a random rooftop with 5 HP and 2 MP. The man is relieved to learn that he managed to shake his brother off, but soon falls into despair knowing that their power levels are so far apart, he could not even scratch Taiga. If Taiga finds him again, it will surely be the end of Subaru's journey. He also realizes that Taiga ruined the shirt he had just bought, and that he also left the other clothes back at the cafe. Apart from getting chased by his own brother, his day was full of freedom, so Subaru vows to fight for his rights and never go back to that shack again. The next day, a girl is waiting outside a gate when a bunch of guys show up to claim it for themselves. She reveals she registered this gate on the website and asks them to leave, but the guys say she looks pretty weak and that she should let them have this one. However, she confidently stands up to these guys, claiming they have no idea how much of a badass she really is. This girl is Sayaka, a bronze-ranked player who definitely smells trouble. However, after she gets his butt kicked, the guys realize she was just bluffing and is actually pretty weak. They ask what her level is, and she confidently replies that she's level 8. However, the guys make fun of him, revealing themselves as Team Glax with a collective level of 13. They know she cannot beat them, so they decide to beat her up until she gives up the gate. They decide to apply the law of the jungle, which Sayaka is fully aware of. She recalls being kicked out of her previous team who looked down on her, which is why she cannot afford to lose here. Just as they prepare to battle, Sayaka is well aware she cannot beat them. Luckily, an uninvited guest has appeared, who wants to take part in this Law of the Jungle contest. That guest is none other than Subaru, who is rocking that fresh out of the garbage can look. Not wanting him to interfere, one of the guys approaches him only to get splatted onto concrete thanks to Subaru's bubble gum. Seeing him fall flat on his face, everyone gets shocked and starts taking him seriously, which would be a first in his entire life. With a stern look on his face, Subaru tells them to skedaddle as he has to get stronger ASAP. The guys ask Subaru what level he is at, and he tells them he's still at level 1. They assumed he's super weak but lucked out with a ranged skill, unaware that he is actually stronger than gold players. This is why they charge him down like a bunch of idiots, as if that would accomplish anything. They approach him one after the other, but thanks to his skills, Subaru is able to see through their attacks and defeat them easily. As he beats them up, they are shocked to see someone so strong just at level 1. One of the guys actually pulls out a gun and fires several shots at Subaru, but Subaru uses his bubblegums to block the bullets. He then introduces the guy to his fist and sends him flying, leaving only Sayaka, who is already on her knees. She fails to understand how a mere level 1 can defeat 5 bronze players with a single hit, assuming that Subaru's starting stats must be really high for an average player. She knows no bronze or silver is this strong, so she believes Subaru must be a gold-ranked player. Amid all the fighting, Subaru's shit got completely ruined, so he rips the hoodie from one of the guys and claims it for himself. He then bows at Sayaka to show his respect and casually enters the door, leaving her confused on her knees. Inside the door, Subaru sees the user interface that reveals the place to be Chromatic Canyon, which is a 2-star gate. Subaru comments on how these zones are supposed to be very dangerous, but the scenery he is seeing is quite nice. Just then, the door opens behind him and bumps him in the head, which knocks him down. Behind the door is Sayaka, who immediately locks the door behind them, making sure they don't leave without defeating the final boss. Subaru is confused and asks her why she entered despite him, winning the fight fair and square. However, Sayaka reminds him that she is the one who registered this gate, and those thugs were merely trying to steal it from her. Subaru realizes that there is a whole system for who gets to raid which gate through registration, which makes sense, or else the players would be fighting to death with each other over gates. Subaru realizes his mistake and apologizes to Sayaka, claiming this is the first time he has ever entered the gate and that he is unfamiliar with the rules. He then explains that he needs to level up quickly and asks if she would like to team up for this raid. Seeing how Subaru saved her ass from another beatdown, she hesitantly agrees to let him join. Besides, she herself feels pretty weak and understands why people want to get stronger. However, she says she will take 70% of the money once they cash out the stars. Money is not a problem for Subaru for not, so he happily agrees to their deal. She then introduces herself as Sayaka and offers a hand of friendship, and right before Subaru introduces himself, he realizes that he might be a suspect in that recent incident, so he must hide his true identity. Thus, he introduces himself as Vanquish. With the introductions aside, Sayaka excitedly tells him to start hunting. Just then, a horde of goblins and kobolds show up, and Sayaka decides to take them on by herself. Unlike before, she uses his enhanced physical abilities to rush through the horse, and before Subaru can even catch a glimpse, she manages to defeat every single one of them all by herself. Subaru is standing there feeling more useless than Sakura, seeing how she took out every single one of them with a single hit. Sayaka explains her skill Instant Void, that knocks out every target as long as she makes contact with her strikes. Her skill is a bad match for those who have ranged abilities, but in close quarter combat, she is unmatched. However, all the opponents she has knocked out get back up at once, and that's when Subaru learns a tiny little detail about her power. You see, every opponent she knocks down stays down for only 3 seconds. If she does not run away or defeat them in that time, the opponent will spring back up and kick her butt. While she is surrounded by dozens of goblins and kobolds, Subaru is just standing there because she asked him to leave it to her. However, now she needs his help, but Subaru is too far away. At his rate, she might get executed, and Subaru can't use his blades or he might end up hurting her too. However, he has another trick up his sleeve that might actually work. The man uses his blood mold to create several ropes that strangle the monsters by the throat, stopping them from approaching Sayaka. As she stands there in shock, wondering what kind of power this is, Subaru is on the other side holding the all back. The man then pulls back on the ropes with all his strength, flinging several dozen monsters into the air like it's nothing. As the monsters fall to their deaths, Sayaka is both amazed and terrified at what Subaru has just accomplished. She looks at Subaru as if he's some sort of a hero, and Subaru, on the other hand, gets a notification about leveling up. Just by this single attack, Subaru's level has increased to 4, and his blood mold ability has increased to level 2, which not only increases its strength, but also its duration. Subaru also realizes that his wounds have also disappeared and both his HP and MP have fully replenished, thanks to him leveling up. As he celebrates this feat, Sayaka comes running at him, wondering what kind of a beast this man really is. Subaru, on the other hand, is clueless about his own powers and compliments Sayaka for having such an amazing skill. However, Sayaka is confused as her skill is nothing compared to the one he has. She explains how her skill works for 3 seconds, and if the monster is 3 levels higher than her, it won't work at all. Despite this major flaw, Subaru explains that her skill is actually overpowered in a one-on-one close Ranga fight, because she can simply apply it over and over again. The fact that she skipped over this simple maneuver really highlights her talent for being unbelievably stupid. Just then, some more monsters show up, and this time, with this newfound knowledge, she charges in to take them off. Unlike before, she continues to pound on the goblin and keeps applying her skill over and over again until the goblin is defeated. Once she gets the notification, she is overjoyed and comments on how it feels almost illegal to use this skill. With newfound confidence in her abilities, she decides to keep pounding more monsters till she clears the whole realm. Subaru watches from a distance, praying she doesn't repeat the same cringeworthy train wreck as last time. Surprisingly, she's getting the hang of it and doing fine for herself. Just then, she gets a notification that a boss has appeared and turns around to see it standing right before Subaru. The boss is actually a level 17 goblin chief, who is riding a giant level 12 kobold. Subaru does not flinch. In fact, he is so confident in his powers that he asks Sayaka to clear her side of the field while he takes this one by himself. The goblin locks eyes with Subaru, but nothing will stand in the way of him in victory. The kobold makes the first move, rushing him with several back-to-back vicious strikes, but Subaru dodges them with ease. Just then, the goblin chief activates his skill and loads an arrow that starts glowing green. The skill is called Foliage, which splits the arrow into multiple smaller arrows that are just as deadly as the original. Subaru quickly covers himself with blood-molded gum, and barely survives as the arrows almost pierce through the bubble. Before he can even think about his next move, the kobold strikes and pops the bubble, making him realize how powerful the boss really is. While they're beating the life out of each other, Sayaka stands back, knowing she's about as useful as thoughts and prayers at a funeral. Just then, more kobolds arrive, and she decides to take care of things on her side first. Meanwhile, Subaru uses blood mold to create several shards and launches them toward the boss, but the kobold jumps over them easily, giving the goblin chief another open window to launch his arrows. As Subaru is stormed with several arrows, he uses blood mold as a shield to block them, but it is not as effective against a piercing weapon. The boss pair perfectly complement each other because the kobold is a master at close ranga combats and dodging, while the goblin is skilled at long ranga attacks, making it nearly impossible to approach them. Subaru is unable to find any openings or holes in their defense, and even his blood rope is useless against these two. Just then, the goblin attacks him with a second skill called perforation, which launches a big glowing arrow towards Subaru. The man sees it coming and uses blood mold to block it, but the arrow is so strong it pierces right through his defense. As the arrow goes through Subaru's body, the hole in his body is bigger than the one in your mother after a Saturday night at the club. As Subaru shrieks in pain, he realizes the force from the arrow is too strong, and the flurry of arrows is just a decoy to catch him off guard. As he falls to his knees, the goblin charges yet another arrow, leaving him wondering what to do. Just then, Sayaka arrives out of nowhere and punches the kobold in the face. Subaru yells at her to back off as her skill won't work on the kobold, who's 4 levels higher than her, but much to his surprise, it actually faints. Not understanding how this is possible, Subaru looks down and realizes that Sayaka has cleared the entire realm of all the monsters, which has leveled her up to 9. As the kobold lies there fainted, she keeps punching it after 3 seconds to make sure it stays down. Just then, the goblin leaps off its body into the air, ready to launch another arrow. Sayaka tells Subaru that she is all out of MP, but the man thanks her for giving him enough time. Subaru then uses blood ropes to tie the kobold up, and uses its elasticity to launch himself towards the goblin chief. Once the distance is closed, he pulls the rope to crush the kobold, allowing him to defeat it. This not only levels him up to 6, but also restores both his health and magic. All that is left is for him to take out the goblin chief. Remembering his brother's golden arm, he creates a similar piece of armor on his arm and names it Bloodfist. In desperation, the goblin uses his skill once more, but Subaru punches through with ease and then strikes the boss, obliterating him with a single strike. With the boss defeated, Subaru levels up 3 more times, taking his total to level 9. Also, his blood mold has leveled up to 3, increasing its strength and duration to 20 seconds. While he stands there like a total badass, Sayaka cannot believe he took both the bosses out and starts fangirling over him. The man casually turns around, giving him a gentle smile and a peace sign indicating their victory. With that, the chromatic canyon is cleared and Subaru's stats have increased significantly, to the point that he is almost as strong as Taiga. On the outside, the gang that tried to steal the door from Subaru and Sayaka is waiting, and the guy who got his hoodie stolen is shivering with cold. He vows to take Subaru's life once he comes out because his ego is bigger than the bump on his cheek. One of them notices that the door has been cleared, leaving them shocked. A 2-star door usually takes 2 hours to complete, but Sayaka and Subaru have managed it in just 15 minutes. Just then, the door is opened, and out comes the dynamic duo, looking like they just came out of a hot shower. The gang is completely baffled that Sayaka, whom they beat earlier, completed the gate. Just then, a notification pops up stating that the remaining time of the chromatic canyon will be added to the sky clock. Everyone looks up and sees the clock go from 19 hours to over 22 hours. The sky clock is something that is visible from anywhere on the planet, and people believe the world will come to an end once its timer reaches 0. Whenever a gate is cleared, the remaining time is added to the sky clock, which is the main reason players keep clearing more gates. Seeing the timer go up, the gang realizes Subaru and Sayaka actually cleared the gate. The recommended level for a 2-star gate is 10, but Subaru was level 1 and Sayaka was level 8 when they entered it. Just then, Subaru apologizes to the guy for stealing his hoodie and offers to buy him a new one, but the man is so terrified of Subaru's powers that he simply asks him to keep it. His friend reminds him how he was boasting about taking revenge on Subaru once he came out, but the guy denies everything and tells Subaru to take his pants too if he likes. The whole gang then bows in respect and congratulates the 2 of them for successfully completing the raid. As they stroll away, Subaru asks Sayaka what's up with these clowns, and she says they're running away to change their diapers cause he made them piss their pants. Just then, they notice the door cracking behind them. Once the door fully breaks, 2 stars drop in its place, and Sayaka decides it's time they get their bank accounts topped. However, Subaru has a request regarding that matter. Later, as the two arrive at the cafe, Sayaka learns that Subaru wants to cash out the stars using her name. She reminds Subaru how they promised to do a 70-30 split, but Subaru is more focused on the drink. Given how he has lived like Harry Potter before he joined Hogwarts, coming to the cafe is like a dream come true for him. Sayaka has to yell to snap him back to reality, reminding him that they need to split the money. Subaru is indifferent and tells her that he will just get it later. Sayaka then gets all serious and questions him about his real name, causing him to spit his drink out in shock. For someone hiding behind an alias and too scared to cash out under his real name, while being absurdly OP at level 1, Sayaka can't help but wonder who this clown really is. Subaru goes silent and starts thinking about whether he should reveal his identity or not, but Sayaka quickly stands up and clarifies that she is not judging him. After going to battle with him, she knows Subaru is a good person and understands that everyone has their reasons. Besides, Subaru saved her from getting her ass whopped by those gang members, so she asks if he would continue raiding gates with her. She then firmly declares that she wants to be friends with Subaru. Soon after, her face goes through 50 shades of red as she offers help to him whenever he needs it, although she isn't sure how much of a help she is going to be. Meanwhile, Subaru hears the word friend and starts flashbacking about being treated like a bitch with STD by his classmates and his family. Finally, after all that torture, the man has landed himself a chick. Subaru is so happy his eyes tear up at the thought of having a friend and humbly accepts her proposal. He then introduces himself as Subaru Ariake and tells her everything that has happened to him in the past 2 days. After explaining the bullying, the rainbow door, and framing for murder, Sayaka realizes he's in deeper shit than a plumber after a Taco Bell party. She is upset on Subaru's behalf because Taida stole his gold door and became one of the most famous players in Japan. Sayaka finally understands that Subaru wants to get stronger fast so he can defend himself in case he runs into Taiga. Sayaka then reveals that she is the middle child of her family, and both her older and younger sister are players as well. They both got silver doors, but Sayaka's door was bronze because God just hates every middle child on the planet. The 3 sisters started a team together, but once they started growing, they cast her aside because she was weaker than them. Her goal is to get super strong and make her sisters regret their decision. Their situation is kind of the same, except Subaru's brother is trying to end his existence, like he's got an achievement to unlock. Sayaka is determined and asks Subaru to team up with her so they can level up together. She then offers a hand of friendship, making him promise that they will never betray or abandon each other if things get hard. Unbeknownst to her, the only thing that's currently hard is Subaru's schlong, cause the man has never experienced a woman's touch, much like people who watch Manhwa recaps on YouTube. Subaru then happily shakes hands with her, looking forward to breaking gates during the day and beds during the night. Since they are the same age, Sayaka asks him to drop the formalities and address each other on a first-name basis. That evening, at the meeting room of the Players Association headquarters, all the gold players meet up and discuss what to do with Taiga, who is currently in solitary confinement. Hirasaka asks the rest what they should do with that buzzcut idiot, and Shikishima, who is too engrossed in his phone to care, comments that he does not like Taiga because the man is way too insensitive. Udo, on the other hand, believes they are the only ones capable of raiding 5-star doors, and that they lack the numbers to counter the higher difficulty gates anymore. Hirasaka, always thinking with his ass, proposes raiding more gates until Taiga is out, and suggests they ask silver-ranked players do 5-star raids. While Shikishima finds it quite dangerous, Udo believes that 10 silver-ranked players who are above level 30 should be enough to clear a 5-star gate. He reveals there are currently 7 5-star gates that require urgent attention, and since there are only 6 gold players available, they decide to assign the one in Meguro to Team Giulietta, which has an average level of 31. Their leader is Giulietta Hazaki, who herself is level 38. Sometime later, Subaru and Sayaka arrive at the Players Association and find the place crowded by Team Giulietta. As they maneuver through their members to the counter, Subaru bumps into their leader Giulietta, who asks him to watch his step. After crossing them, he asks Sayaka who these people are, and she introduces them as one of the strongest silver-ranked teams. She wonders why they are all gathered here, but Subaru tells her it's not their concern and they are only here to cash out their stars. After cashing out, they plan to find another gate and reserve it at the counter. Just then, Sayaka reveals she found a 2-star gate, which will be a piece of cake for the two of them. When Subaru asks where the gate is located, she reveals it is in Meguro, the same city where Team Julieta is headed to raid a 5-star gate. Just then, a 2-star gate appears in the city, with a timer of nearly 18 hours. The door takes the players to a zone called the Soldier's Grave, which starts with a never-ending staircase into the underworld. The next thing you know, Subaru and Sayaka are inside the zone and things have not turned out exactly as they planned. Subaru is holding the gravely injured and seemingly lifeless body of Sayaka, while his own left arm is severed by whatever they were fighting. Sayaka keeps bleeding and does not respond as if she's dead, which ticks Subaru off. His eyes are filled with a rainbow aura as he looks at his opponent menacingly. Suddenly, his whole body is covered in that same aura, which he uses to pull his arm back and re-tack it to his body. Thinking that Sayaka has been yeeted from existence, Subaru is filled with rage and won't give up until he avenges her. 2 hours before this, the duo entered the gate, and Subaru asked if it was possible to know about the zone before entering the gate. Sayaka told him that one is free to come and go in the zone as they please as long as the gate isn't locked by a player from the inside. This means a player can act as a scout and survey the area before his team enters. Seeing the narrow staircase leading down to God knows what, Sayaka had the stupid idea to lock the gate, as she believed her skill would be very useful here. As soon as they locked the gate, several undead monsters started walking up the stairs to face them. Just then, Subaru sensed a very strong aura coming from the bottom and looked over to see a bright purple flame, making him realize that it was coming from the boss. Soon after, the whole staircase was filled with hundreds, if not thousands of these undead skeletons, and their sheer number was enough to throw Sayaka off. She was so overwhelmed that she was about to get stabbed by the very first skeleton, but Subaru quickly used his blood mold to protect her. Following that, Sayaka finally regained her senses and started chomping down on the undead one after the other. As Subaru walked up to her, she revealed that these skeletons were at least level 10, and since they were blocking the only path down, the duo had to clear all of them before reaching the boss. Going back was not an option because the gate was locked, so they got to clearing the stairs. Even though the terrain was in favor of them, the skeletons were still too many. Besides, Subaru had noticed that chilling aura coming from the bottom, which was much stronger than the goblin chief he fought in the chromatic canyon. Soon after, Sayaka charged in and took several more skeletons, but she was covered in wounds which made Subaru worry. He yelled at her to stay back and take some time to recover, but Sayaka explained why that was a stupid idea. She added that leveling up inside the zone heals one's HP and MP to the fullest, so they must set the aggressive approach and level up until the floor is cleared. As she leveled up to 10, her body was fully healed, and seeing her recover, Subaru joined her in the attack. The man used Blood Tide to flood the entire staircase, which almost depleted his entire mana, leaving the hundreds of skeletons immobile. As he took a breather, Sayaka quickly jumped in and defeated many of them, leveling her up from 10 to 15. After that, Subaru got his share of the skeletons, which leveled him up directly to 16, thus healing his entire mana. When Sayaka turned around to compliment Subaru on his skills, she commented on how even the monsters were terrified of his powers. Just then, one of the undead tried to ambush Sayaka, but Subaru quickly took it out and advised her never to let her guard down. At this rate, the duo was going to reach the bottom at a much higher level than what they started at. But despite that, Subaru felt tense and anxious feeling whenever he sensed the aura coming from the bottom. Soon after, the duo cleared the entire staircase and Sayaka reached level 20 while Subaru was sitting at level 19. That's when they arrived at the bottom, where they faced the skeleton boss who was dressed as a bride. The boss was Judith, the fallen empress, level 29, and she was about to make their lives miserable, one death at a time. As the duo prepared to battle, Judith demonstrated her powers by pulling out a whip that destroyed everything it touches. Subaru gave them a shield using blood mold, and realized that the boss was using a wide space to her advantage. Judith was a long-ranged attacker, who was going to use the large terrain to create distance. That's when Sayaka realized that she is heavily mismatched here, as her specialty is close ranged combat. This meant Subaru had to do most of the handiwork. However, the man was skeptical, because he believed the aura he felt from Judith was a little different than the one he felt from the top of the staircase. As Judith swung her wits around crazy, Sayaka and Subaru barely dodged them, realizing they couldn't get close to her. Subaru then used his brain for the first time in his life and saw that Judith's whips were extended through magic. This meant they were made up of mana, much like his own blood mold creations. Sadaka was useless in this situation because she could not get close, but even if she did, she wouldn't be able to use her skill because the level difference between her and Judith is too far apart. It would have been better for Subaru to take her on by himself because he could use blood mold both offensively and defensively. But if he did that, Sadaka would not receive any XP from the boss. He recalled how they promised to get stronger together and never abandon each other, which made Subaru quite happy. He did not want to betray the only friend he had ever made, which is why he thought of another plan. He told Sadaka that he would negate Judith's wits completely, so she could go in and give her a few hits. Sadaka was initially doubtful because it was easier said than done, but she decided to put her faith in Subaru. The man then used blood mold with 100% viscosity, which even surprised Judith for a second. Following that, Subaru created several balls out of blood mold, while his body was covered in a rainbow-colored aura. Once again, Judith looked at it and was surprised as if she had seen a ghost. She tried to cut through the sticky balls, but they were just too soft and started sticking to her body. Eventually, her entire body was engulfed in blood mold, which gave Sayaka precious time to land some hits. Even Sayaka was surprised to see Subaru go this extreme, and as she rushed in, she commented on how this skill made Subaru practically invisible. However, Subaru knew very well that his skill was just a lucky counter to Judith, and it won't be that simple each time. With that, Sayaka reached Judith and started using her skull as her personal punching bag. As her fists landed, she was startled to see that they barely had any effect on the boss, but despite that, she continued to hit her countless times. Subaru explained that a player could only gain XP from a boss if they had damaged at least 20% of their HP, which made him wonder how people with healing skills leveled up. When there were only 5 seconds left on his mold, he asked Sayaka to step back or she might get hurt. Without wasting a second, Sayaka made some distance, but even then she was almost sliced up by Judith once the mold expired. Not wanting to give up, Judith turned all her wits on Sayaka, but Subaru covered her in yet another mold ball, shielding her from all damage. Seeing her abilities countered so easily, Judith surprised both of them by calling Subaru an imbecile. As her body menacingly emitted a strong aura, she questioned how Subaru got his hands on such a powerful skill. Subaru, on the other hand, was shocked to his core because he did not know infernal creatures could talk. Judith refused to believe that someone so powerful would grant his powers to a mere human, which led Subaru to believe that she was somehow familiar with Vanquish. Subaru wanted to learn more about Vanquish and asked if they could talk, but telling her to calm down was as pointless as asking a Karen to respect store policy. Judith, in her fitting rage, tore her own gown apart, revealing countless skulls attached to her body. This absurd transformation left both Subaru and Sayaka in shock, but Sayaka revealed she had heard about such skills from her sisters. Some bosses are capable of changing their forms by using all of their mana, and Judith happened to be one of them. With her new form, Judith was about to Kamehameha both of them, but Subaru was quick to put his mold shield up. He soon realized that the attack was too powerful and the shield would melt if he just kept blocking. As his mana kept draining, he had to think on his feet, because Sayaka was right behind him. Just then, Subaru grew a pair and started marching towards Judith, which shocked her. As he closed the distance, he once again used blood mold to create a blade that pierced through Judith, which separated her head from her body. With that, Judith was defeated, and the user interface confirmed their victory. With that, Subaru leveled up to 20, but he was frustrated because he failed to get more info on Vanquished from Judith. However, this left her questioning if the beings inside the gates and the doors of trials are one and the same, given how they know each other and even have the ability to speak. Just then, he heard Sayaka cheering for him in the background, and turned around to that she had leveled up to 21. This made her happy as he kept his promise of getting stronger together. With this zone completed, Subaru vowed to converse with the next boss to learn more about these gates and Vanquish. Sayaka then mentioned how despite defeating the boss, they did not get a notification telling them that they had completed the quest, which was quite odd. Subaru started panicking, believing they were trapped in there, but just then, he heard a noise behind them. As they turned around, they saw another rainbow door spawning, which was another door of trails. This was Sayaka's first time seeing a rainbow's door, and now she had proof that Subaru was telling the truth. She cheered Subaru on for getting his second door, but Subaru had no idea doors appeared multiple times to one player. She explained how each door had separate conditions to appear, and a player could get new skills by completing more trials. Subaru assumes the condition of this must have been level 20, which he reached after defeating Judith. Sayaka explained how Hirasaka had taken 7 trials, which meant he had 7 different skills. Sayaka was super confident in her skills, claiming they might become the strongest duo if they kept going on like this. Subaru realized he was already quite strong with just blood mold alone, so if he could gain new skills, he might just become as strong as the gold players. With glittery eyes, Sayaka cheered for Subaru to enter the door and complete the trial, prompting the man to open the door. However, as soon as the door was opened, someone attacked him from the inside, causing his left arm to get chopped off. As he turned around, he saw the attack go right through Sayaka's body, causing her to lose that glow in her eyes. Sayaka, in her last moment of consciousness, apologized to Subaru before falling down. Subaru could not understand what happened and rushed toward her, causing him a trip and fall. Just then, he noticed a vampire stepping out of the door, looking much similar to Vanquish, the doormaster who gave Subaru his powers. This vampire showed no remorse for slicing Sayaka in half, but Subaru immediately noticed that the aura he sensed from the top of the staircase came from this guy. Subaru then tended to a heavily bleeding Sayaka, who looked completely lifeless. The vampire then mockingly apologized for hitting her, but then stated that someone who can be defeated by such a simple attack was only going to get in the way. He claims he did Subaru a favor by getting rid of her, and it was at this moment Subaru lost his good guy attitude, which brings us to the present. Filled with rage, Subaru rushes the vampire down and attacks him with all his strength. After blocking the hit, the vampire introduces himself as Kion the Ghoul Lord, who happens to be one of Vanquish's deputies. Kion then bestows a trial upon Subaru, who does not care anymore and just wants to execute him. Meanwhile, the user interface shows that Sayaka is on the verge of death and will be completely lifeless in 48 seconds. It also gives Subaru an option to use the Blood Taker skill, but he doesn't even know what this skill does right now. Following that, Subaru enters the gate and arrives at a realm that is an endless desert of sand. Realizing that Kion works for Vanquish, Subaru gets furious and asks Vanquish in his head to explain himself. However, the Vanquish vanquishes in all irony without giving him an answer. Kion then explains that what Subaru has in his mind is not the real Vanquisive, but rather an instruction manual on how to use blood mold. Thus, he can only provide info on the ability. With that, Kion welcomes Subaru into the trail room and reveals that he will have to inflict damage on him to pass the trail. Kion believes Subaru must have become stronger by now and asks him to show his new strength, but even before he can finish his sentence, Subaru lunges at him with a kick. Kion blocks the hit with ease, and while Subaru's eyes display a hunter's instinct, the doormaster asks him to stand back and let him finish the sentence. He then explains that if Subaru manages to complete this trail, he will be rewarded with Lord Vanquish's prized possession, the Mystic Piercer. However, Subaru is filled with uncontrollable rage, claiming the only thing he cares about right now is putting Kion 6 feet under the ground. Taking some inspiration from Dr. Octopus, Subaru produces several blood-molded arms from his back to stab him, but Kion dodges them all by easily jumping over them. He compliments Subaru for using blood mold to its full potential, but also comments that it is still too slow. Subaru then creates whips of blood mold, which intrigues Kion. He realizes Subaru got the idea from fighting Judith, and reveals how he was watching his trail with Lord Vanquish. He comments on how Subaru has this ability to adapt and learn from his opponents, meaning the more bosses he fights, the stronger he will get. Subaru, on the other hand, asks the guy to stop running and face him like a man as he has no time right now. Kion actually listens to his cries and attacks him back, cutting through his whips like a hot knife through butter. That's when Subaru realizes how outmatched he truly is. As he falls to his knees like your mother whenever she visits the club, Kion starts flexing the Mystic Piercer. He explains that it is imbued with Lord Vanquish's essence, and even has the power to cut through the sky. This means Subaru's defense is nothing in front of this weapon. As Kion is yapping about the sword, he feels the ground shaking and quickly jumps up. Just then, several blood-molded roots burst from the sand. Yet another one of Subaru's pitiful, half-assed attempts to actually land a hit. Kion is amused to see Subaru's creativity, because he is now using his feet to create blood molds. The man compliments Subaru's wits and acknowledges him as a true warrior, while he casually dodges all of the roots. He then approaches Subaru and punches him in the belly, stating that it would not have been any fun if Subaru had not put up a good fight. The punch is so strong it makes the man puke blood, but Kion follows it up with a strong palm strike that basically turns him into a zombie. As Subaru lies there, half buried in sand, Kion mocks him for believing he is strong enough just by completing a couple of gates. Subaru, in his rage and desire for revenge, heavily underestimated the opponent before him. Kion explains how trails aren't someone people pass on a whim, and if one doesn't put everything they have into them, they can even die inside the doors. Ignoring his bit, Subaru stands up once again, this time covered in his own blood. Kion yells at him to stop being stupid and pay attention to what he is saying, but Subaru refuses to listen because he has to return to Sayaka. In a stroke of genius, he uses blood mold to cover his entire body with armor and channels his hatred to attack him once again. As he lunges towards Kion, the man jumps over, but Subaru creates roots from his back to catch him off guard. Once again, Kion dodges the attack, and the two clash fists for the first time. When the armor blocks Kirion's fist, he decides to pull out the Mystic Piercer again, hoping to intimidate Subaru. However, Subaru attacks him again and gets his arm chopped off for the second time. As Kion lets his guard down thinking Subaru will stand back, he is surprised by Subaru using blood mold to quickly reattach his arm. Despite all odds, Subaru manages to strike Kion in the face, followed by a kick to his face. At that moment, Kion realizes that if Subaru ever ran out of mana, his body would be sliced into several parts, and he would die in an instant, which means he is truly giving his all. Kion then recalls meeting Lord Vanquish after he gave Subaru his powers. Vanquish told him that Subaru was such a bold idiot that when he was transferring his powers to him, he actually bit him back. Despite being a total loser, this one action alone made him a badass in Vanquish's eyes, and Kion wanted to see that for himself. He admits that Subaru is truly amazing, just as his master told him. However, he also declares that a few kicks and punches will not be enough to damage him. Just then, Subaru walks up to him with a look so cold, it actually intimidates him. Subaru then takes his armor to the next level, creating a super strong lance around his arm. He declares that he did not underestimate Kion, but rather the opposite. As the lance pierces through Kirion's body, he starts puking blood from his mouth, showing clear signs of afflicted damage. However, Subaru is not going to stop there. In fact, he is going to make sure Kion is yeeting from existence before he exits the door. Will Subaru be able to save Sayaka in time, or will he lose the only friend he has ever made? We'll find out in the next part. That's it for this video. Drop a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for similar content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.